What is up, guys? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and today we're going to be talking about Tavion Thomas. We're going to do an overview of what he brings to the table as a player, what style of play he enjoys, what he's good at, what he's not good at. We're also going to talk about his PFF grades. We'll talk about the stats over the past 2 years with Utah, and just in general talk about finally where I think he'll be drafted. Now, this should be a fun time. Before we dive into it, if you guys appreciate the video, please do make sure you guys give it a like. Also, make sure you guys comment below. Maybe you disagree with where I have him projected. Maybe you disagree with the skills that I have stated for him. Or maybe you agree a lot and just want to say that. I'm happy to hear it either way. And more than anything, if you guys are big-time Utes fans or college football fans or just appreciate the draft analysis, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way, and I appreciate you guys supporting the content. And on that note, let's go ahead and take a look at Tavion Thomas. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is the overview. So the pros and cons of Tavion Thomas. What does he bring to the field as a player? There's a lot of good for Tavion Thomas. The first thing for Tavion is going to be the great quickness for his size. He is really quick and really agile for how big he is. That'll impress a lot of teams. You know, this is a guy that rips through arm tacklers. You know, anytime someone's just reaching out with one arm, he is too big to bring down that way. 6'2", 235 to 40 pounds, depending on who you believe. A really big guy with real good quickness that rips through arm tacklers. He's also a great runner at the second level. And what I mean by that is once he gets to the linebackers, he really does a good job of making one of them miss. He really does. He does a great job. He gets there, a little cutback, a little juke, something like that, and then he'll take it for another 5-10 yards. A guy that really wants to make big plays, and that's obvious when he gets second level. He also has very solid speed and acceleration for his size. You're not going to see a lot of guys that are 6'2", nearly 240 pounds that can move the way Tavion does. He is a big, big dude that runs with mean intentions, and if you give him open field, he will make you pay, and he will break it away. Now, some of the cons for Tavion, there definitely are some. The first thing is he's very hot and cold. I'll talk a little more about that when we go over the stats, but there were games where you felt like Tavion was the best player on the field, and there were other games where you felt like Tavion shouldn't even be getting carries. And I know that might sound a little harsh that he shouldn't be getting carries, and maybe that's an exaggeration, but I think if you're a Utah fan, you kind of know from watching Tavion that there were games where he really went out there, put it all on the line, and did a great job, and there were other games where you're just like, yo, what is going on here? Like, where is the Tavion running with the head of steam that I know? Because he's not there tonight. And when the games were hot, they'd be really hot, and when they're cold, they'd be really cold. And I could see some coaching staffs, you know, not loving that, right? Not loving that you're not getting a solid player every game. You're kind of getting a boom or bust guy every play or every game. So I could see some coaching staffs not loving that. Not a great short yardage back either. I think when you look at Tavion's size, that 6'2", 235 to 240, you think this is going to be a guy that you give it to him, you let him run it up the gut and pound it ahead for a couple extra yards. That's not how it worked, really. I mean, I feel like often if Tavion got met in the backfield, he was going down. And that's not something I love to say. It's just being honest, right? That he's a power back with a lot of elusiveness and agility and some good downhill speed. But the short yards like that, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, that's not always where he shined. He could have, you know, some struggles getting those short yardage. And I could see that being a problem for some teams because if you're going to draft a guy like Tavion, that's where you want to see him make his money, right? Is in the short yardage situations. So is what it is there. So that was the pros and cons. Again, for pros, great quickness for his size, rips through arm tackles, great second level runner, solid speed and acceleration. You know, a guy that really, once he gets second level, makes big plays. But the cons, very hot and cold. He'd have some games where he was an absolute animal, then some games where you really wish you were getting more from him. Also, for a guy of that size, with that type of power, you'd like him to be a little better at getting the short yardage between the tackles. Okay, now let's take a look at the stats for Tavion Thomas. Like I said earlier, Tavion Thomas, very hot and cold, but the stats, both seasons are not bad stats. So in 2021, which is the huge year for Tavion, where he came onto the scene and became, Thomas the Tank Engine, as the Utes fans like to call him, Tavion had 204 carries for 1,108 yards. So on 204 carries, he averaged 5.4 yards per carry. So a very, very good average, and got 21 touchdowns. And I would say that average is slightly minimized because of the touchdowns, right? A lot of the short yardage situations that he was able to punch in 2021, that average would probably be a little higher if it wasn't getting so many touchdowns. And like I talked about earlier, right, he's a very explosive player. He had a rush of 58 yards, was his long. That's a huge run for a guy that's listed at 6'2", 238 pounds. Just a big guy that can go downhill. And then in 2022, Tavion had 142 attempts for 687 yards. 4.8 yards a carry, so not terrible there, and 7 touchdowns with one big run of 36 yards. So slightly worse this year, especially in the touchdowns, right? He went from 21 touchdowns to 7 touchdowns, but we knew there'd be regression there. I think we all thought Tavion would get into the double digits, but you didn't think he'd get 20-plus rushing touchdowns again. So a solid season from Tavion. Kind of a weird situation, right? He had some off-the-field issues, from what I understand, that kept him off the field a little bit, which could be another red flag for coaches. But he did come back. He did battle through it. Really had to earn that spot. He went all the way. He went as far as he had to work on kickoff to get reps as a starter again. So he really earned a spot back. But like I talked about, up and down, let's go through this year's game log, right? Against Florida, Tavion did a great job. 23 carries for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. Against SUU, doesn't really matter that much. Just very solid game. 11 carries for 48 yards, 4.4 yards a carry. And then against SDSU, not a very great game. An average-ish game. 16 carries, 59 yards, 3.7 yards a carry, 1 touchdown. ASU, really good game. 11 carries, 60 yards for 5.5 yards a carry. And this is where I'm guessing the off-the-field issue started, because against Oregon State, he only got 6 carries for 13 yards and averaged 2.2 yards a carry. That's pretty dreadful. Against UCLA, another good game. 18 carries for 91 yards and 1 touchdown, so 5.1 yards per carry. All right, and then USC, 8 carries, 28 yards, 3.5 yards a carry. So not a great game there. And USC's not, a spectacular run defense. It's not like you kind of expected him to have a better game there. But then he goes on to kind of come back and have a really good 2-game stretch. Arizona, 8 carries, 38 yards, 4.8 yards a carry. And then he just goes off against Stanford for 22 carries, 180 yards, 8.2 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. And then just a clunker against Oregon. They fed him the ball all night, 19 carries, 55 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4 games this season where Tavion averaged less than 4 yards a carry. And it's not like he was scoring a lot of touchdowns in those games. It just wasn't there. I'm not sure why. I guess he has a broken toe, and that's why one of the reasons he's declaring early. But it just wasn't there. And if you're a coach, that hot and coldness has to be a concern. But let me be clear. The 2021 games for Tavion that season was such a spectacular season that I think there's going to be people, willing to roll the dice on Tavion, even though this year wasn't great. This year wasn't terrible. I think that's kind of how the picture is being portrayed. I think it was just really up and down. Like I said, right? It would be really good games and then really rough games. And two games in there just pretty dreadful. So that's how Tavion's performed over the past 2 years. I'd say overall the sample size is pretty damn good, with a really good one in 2021, and then a decent one this year. I'd say above average this year, but it's concerning how some games he was a monster and some games he was kind of a non-factor. Okay, now we're looking at the PFF grades for Tavion Thomas, and this really could be the saving grace for him. So Tavion Thomas is ranked as the 56th running back according to PFF, but there's a lot of really good running backs right in his range. His total offensive grade was at 83.2, which is very, very good. His running grade was at 84.5, which is, an elite rushing grade. At 84.5, that means he's a pure runner. He's one of the best in the entire country. A 58.3 receiving grade, that's not very good. You'd like that higher. Very bad pass blocking grade, an 11.2. And below average run block grade, 59.2, but that doesn't matter that much. So that's for 2022, right? And now let's go ahead and take a look at how Tavion did in 2021. So in 2021, Tavion's grade was at 89.8. So just a ridiculously good grade, right? He finished as the 15th running back overall, but there was times during that season where he was grading out as a top 5 running back. So grade-wise, he's looking at an average of, let me see, what is the average of those two? Okay, so the grade of 83.2 and a 89.8, we divide that by 2, so he's averaging an 86.5 grade. So if you trust the PFF grades, he's grading out fantastic. Those are really good grades. And so if a coach is heavily reliant on PFF grades and they take those very seriously, then maybe they grade Tavion a little higher than other people. And I would say there were times where the run blocking on this team was really bad. So you can't put all of the bad averages per carry on Tavion. And not bad averages for carry overall, but there were some games that were bad. So I think the really good PFF grades both years and the fact that the offensive line didn't grade out super well, maybe you tip your hat towards Tavion in those and say with a better offensive line, he'd do better. But a disclaimer, the NFL, you don't get a lot of big holes. You're met in the backfield a lot. So you better be able to run the ball in college. So a lot going on there. All right, guys, and if you are enjoying this video, please do make sure you guys like the video. It helps get it out to more fans of college football and Utah Utes football. Also, please make sure you guys comment down below. Like I said earlier, it's awesome making these videos for you guys, and I really just love you guys watching them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm excited to keep making you guys content, whether you're Utah football fans or you're just here because your team's interested in drafting Tavion, or maybe they just drafted Tavion if this is a little farther down the line. And then the number one thing you guys could do if you really want to help out the channel is share this video. Seriously, guys. I'm not just trying to, pimp you guys out to spread my videos, but it really goes a long way. If you guys enjoy this community that we've made here at the Utah Utes Football Digest and you want to spread it to your friends and spread it to the community, please make sure you guys share this with your friends. It goes a long way. And now back to talking about Tavion Thomas. Okay, guys, so as we take a look at the draft projection for Tavion Thomas, I think it's important to consider one big factor, and that is that the running back position is severely devalued, right? So as I say this, whatever my projection is, I know what it is, but you don't know yet. Just understand running backs are way devalued. Like a running back going in the first 3 rounds is similar to almost any other position going in the first round, right? It's a really big deal. So Tavion Thomas, it's two seasons that are pretty drastically different. One where he was a monster, and 2 where he was pretty good. Now you got to ask yourself what you really believe, plus the off the field issues, plus he broke his toe. I mean, who knows what's going on there? I think there's a lot of different factors involved. Also, like I talked about earlier, do you want a big running back that's not exactly great in short yardage situations, right? That's more of a guy that gets second level and makes plays that way. I mean, a lot of people want short yardage big backs, and that's not saying that Tavion can't do that, but it's definitely not his strong suit. So I see Tavion going on day 3. So day 3 is the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, and I could see him going undrafted. So somewhere on day 3, I'd say the latter part of day 3, so maybe 6th or 7th round. And more likely than not, I'd probably say Tavion goes undrafted, but I would not be shocked to see a team take a shot on the upside in the 6th or 7th round. And just so you guys know, it's a big deal for a running back to get drafted. Me saying him getting undrafted is not a shot at him. You have to be really, really good to get drafted at running back. So I see him being somewhere late day 3 to undrafted. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I wish nothing but the best for Tavion, and I hope he goes in the 1st round. But this is how I do realistically seeing it happen. Outside of that, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out of here. Go Utes.